A lot of people have said, I have wondered, whatever, how is it that you know so much stuff? Hmm? How do you know so much stuff about the war that's going on? And a lot of people criticize me and say, hey, he doesn't have any degree in military science. He didn't, excuse me, he didn't go to a military academy or even serve in the military. How come he's talking about it? Why are we listening to the guy? He's not an expert, right? Even though a lot of things I've said are more on point and more accurate than a lot of the current experts. And so a lot of people want to know, how does this happen? And you see, I am the product of an elite liberal arts education, as it was meant to be. You see, a true liberal arts education, the kind that used to be given at Ivy League universities back in, before the 60s. I went to Dartmouth, and Dartmouth has always been, behind the fashion. And so by the time I graduated in 95 from Dartmouth College, it was still a liberal arts college as it was meant to be. And what's that? It teaches young people how to absorb an enormous amount of information in a very short period of time and create a mental model of all of that information that is relatively accurate when contrasted to reality. You see? So, like, for instance, let me give you an example. I took a course with Pamela Crossley. And by the way, this course, I've mentioned it before in other videos on my CRP channel. This course crystallized for me the kind of education I was receiving, because I took this History of the Mongol Empire class, right? And Pamela Crossley was a hard teacher. I mean, she was just, very, very difficult, and I learned a great deal from her. And what happened was that there was this enormous amount of information about the Mongol culture, the Mongol history, Mongol military strategies, and all the rest of it, all this information. And we had to read, 2-3 books a week. On this one stupid course. But see, I quickly realized that the point of it was not to, march through every page of every book. No, the point was to attack all of these books and suck in all the relevant information. Because there was going to be a lot of information in all these books that was pointless. But there was going to be these nuggets of important information that were crucial to figure out a mental structure, a mental matrix, if you will, of everything relevant as to the Mongol culture. And so because the reason I came to this conclusion was because I actually, at the beginning of the course, I added up all the pages of all the books that I was supposed to read and all the outside reading and stuff like that. And I realized that if I just, I don't remember how many pages it was, but I remember, comparing it to the speed of my effective reading and note-taking compared to all the pages that I was supposed to read. Ultimately, I would need something like, I think it was 37 hours per day of reading in order to cover everything properly. 37 hours per day of reading to cover everything properly. And that's when I realized, that's not the point. It's not to read every book and march through every book, every page of every book, and absorb everything indiscriminately. No, the point of a liberal arts education is to dive into an area that you don't know anything about and quickly find out what's important and absorb it and create a model so that you can function effectively in that new mental environment. The war started February 24th here in Ukraine. I don't know anything about military anything, I mean, there were some things that I realized from the very beginning. I remember I'm in Kiev, the very first morning of the invasion, and downtown Kiev is quiet as can be. Just very quiet, peaceful, no big deal, no, fighting on the streets. And I'm realizing, wait, this isn't what I was led to believe. And, over the next 3-4 days, I realized that the Russian army had no intention of invading and assaulting the city of Kiev. And I said so, and I got into trouble because of it. But it was just applying what I had learned in my liberal arts education. And of course, during this period of time, these early days, I was just absorbing all kinds of military information, of which I had no interest whatsoever, and I still don't. I don't really care about the gear and all the rest of it. I just don't care. But I realized that I have to absorb all of this information in order to understand what's going on. And what happens in my position, I realize, insofar as the the online area is that my job, my position, the what I'm supposed to do is absorb a lot of information and give a reasonable explanation to other people who don't have the time or the interest or ability to absorb all of this information. That's what I do. I'm explaining. That's the point of my videos. I'm explaining what's going on in a way that makes sense to normal people. And that, of course, not only makes sense to most normal people, but also accounts for most of the information. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I'm doing, and that's how I did it. And the tragedy is that our current leadership, they also went to universities that allegedly taught a good liberal arts education, like mine did. But they didn't actually learn that. I mean, by the time that they went to university, those golden days of the true liberal arts education were gone. And what they learned is ideology. And ideology is, of course, the antithesis of a true liberal arts education. A liberal arts education is supposed to be eminently flexible. Flexible and not flexibility in terms of switching sides all the time. No, flexible in terms of understanding the different factions, the different positions, and being able to understand them enough to see from their point of view and understand their priorities without taking on those priorities and those points of view as your own. So I can understand the Ukrainian side and I can understand the Russian side without picking either side. But the current educated classes, they were taught ideologically, and that's why they are inflexible. And that's why they side with, I stand with Ukraine, which is just stupid. It's why Europeans, you in Europe, are about to suffer a catastrophic autumn. This autumn, starting in August through September, October, November, is going to be catastrophic. And your winter, I don't want to be in Europe when your winter hits. It's going to be awful. But it goes back to the intellectual inflexibility of the leadership classes. They didn't get a liberal arts education, even though it was advertised to them as such. They got an ideological education. The West is the best. What's good for America is good for Europe. They don't have any flexibility, and that's why they're going down this road, and it's going to be a disaster for the West.